Hey everybody, I'm Jack Reedy with Future Pastimes, and in this video I'm going to be talking about a power alliance in Dune that I call the Stockpile Alliance. And that is one that exists between House Ekaz and the Spacing Guild. And this can be a particularly formidable alliance, as we will see as we dig into what these two factions can do for each other. So first and foremost, the Spacing Guild is an econ faction, so they're going to be getting their income for everybody else shipping to Arrakis from off-planet. And the fact that they are an econ alliance opens up a lot of doors. It means it's going to be easy for them to help Ekaz buy treachery cards. It's going to help them to pay for shipping, and on top of which, they're going to get a discount. They're going to be able to do half-price shipping. They're also going to be able to do cross-shipping as an ally to the Spacing Guild, and that is a big deal because of the Occupy Advantage that the Ekaz faction has. The other thing that being an econ faction means is that they're going to both be able to do what's known as a Doomstack. Doomstacking is when you put a lot of forces into a territory, usually a stronghold. Now, a lot of players don't consider the Spacing Guild to be a combat faction. They're an economy faction. But I think in many ways, they actually are a combat faction because they're an economy faction. So they have a pretty good and reliable income, which means that after the first round of play, they're going to typically be able to afford to buy treachery cards. So they're going to have a full hand for a lot of the game, which means they are more likely on average to have a weapon and or defense than a non-economy faction will be. Now, they don't have particularly strong leaders, but as I mentioned before with Doomstacking, they can usually send enough forces into any particular battle to ensure that they win that battle, even with weak leaders. And that is because on top of that, if you're playing advanced, they're going to also be able to afford to spy styles. That means they're going to have twice the strength in any kind of battle than most non-econ factions are going to have. So when you pair that with the Occupy Advantage, that means that you can have a large number of Spacing Guild forces in a stronghold. They will be able to afford to also send a lot of Ekaz forces into that stronghold, and they can both be in the same stronghold at the same time. And if they're in a battle, they're going to have a lot of forces that are in there. The Spacing Guild will be able to afford to spy style when they're the ones in the battle, and the Ekaz faction, those forces, half of them are going to count at full strength on top of the forces there, which means that Spacing Guild won't necessarily have to dial as high on average. So the Doomstack has its costs, which means if you're dialing high, you're suffering big losses. Now, the other thing that is great about being in an economy faction alliance is that not only will the Spacing Guild typically have a full hand, but they will often be able to afford to help Ekaz or whoever their ally is, but Ekaz in this example also have a full hand for much of the time that they're allied. And the other benefit that you get from the Occupy Advantage is when it does come time to battle, they're basically going to have access to 8 treachery cards, or at least when making a decision about who's going to fight that battle. So if they know, for instance, that they're going to be facing somebody with a projectile weapon that they've seen before, and they have reason to believe that that's the only one that they have, and they can look, oh, which of us factions has a projectile defense, and act accordingly. The other really nice thing about this is with Ekaz and their ambassador advantage, first of all, they're basically always going to have access to the Ekaz ambassador, which, once it gets triggered, it returns to their available supply, which means they can use it again in the next round. And that means that they're going to have access to Duke Vidal, for much of the time. Anytime they trigger the ECAS ambassador while they're in the alliance, they can decide, well, let's give the Duke Vidal to the Spacing Guild, especially if they know ahead of time, all right, yes, the Spacing Guild has a better hand of cards, so if we get into any battles where we're both in the same stronghold, you can do the battle, and we'll give you Duke Vidal that round, and you can decide which battle to use him in. And don't forget that ECAS, if Duke Vidal is killed, they can revive Duke Vidal for 5 spice. So now, while the guild can't pay for Duke Vidal, the spice savings that ECAS has with treachery cards, which the guild can buy for them, and with half-price shipping, which the guild can pay for, they're just paying the spice bank, or ECAS can pay for it. It's still half price, which is nice. And if ECAS does pay for it, then that money stays in the alliance. So that frees them up to spend their spice on other things, in particular, sending down more ambassadors. So they can have more ambassadors placed on Arrakis more often when they get triggered. Once they've triggered all of the extra 5, then they get a brand new set of them. So, and don't forget that whenever an ambassador is triggered, they can decide that the guild, their ally, can benefit from the ambassador. So it makes it much easier, much of the time, for them to get both factions into both strongholds. So, like, for instance, if they trigger the Fremen ambassador, it can move a group of your forces on the board to any territory, subject to storm and occupancy. But let's say the guild has a bunch of forces in Tuix, and ECAS is already co-occupied there, but ECAS is in Habania and the guild isn't. They trigger that ambassador, and the guild can move some of their forces there. Or if somebody triggers the Spacing Guild ambassador, they can have the Spacing Guild send up to 4 of their forces to any territory not in Storm for free. And occupancy rules still matter there, but the idea is that you're getting into a stronghold where ECAS is, so that you are co-occupying it. So this faction, more than any other faction for ECAS, the Spacing Guild has a much easier time getting into the 3 strongholds with ECAS, making it much easier for them to win with that occupy, co-occupy 3 strongholds. You win without having to be in a 4th stronghold as well. The cross-shipping means it's easier for them to get, if they have a bunch of forces in one territory, they can move some of them to another one where ECAS is. So all of these things really work well together. These are 2 factions whose advantages really harmonize very well. And whether it's going for that 3 co-occupied stronghold win, or just helping each other out to get to the stall-out victory, the special win victory condition for the Spacing Guild, their Occupy Advantage helps them out with that as well. And so, yeah, this is a very strong faction, or strong alliance. And so I call it Stockpile Alliance because it's easy for them to stockpile forces onto the board, stockpile cards within each other's hands, and they're stockpiling those forces together to try to co-occupy 3 or more strongholds in order to win the game a little more easily than a lot of the other alliances. So I think that the Stockpile Alliance is very powerful. The 6 strength leader with no traitor card and Duke Vidal makes up for the relatively weak leaders that the guild has. They normally make up for their weak leaders with the Doomstacking. So they put a lot of forces in, and they dial higher, knowing they can also spice dial. But again, with the added forces at full strength that ECAS is bringing into that same territory, then the Spacing Guild may not have to dial as high. Plus the added benefit of maybe the Spacing Guild doesn't even need to fight that battle. If ECAS has a better hand, they can fight the battle. And That way, the losses that ECAS and the guild suffer won't necessarily be as big. Still be half the forces for ECAS, but, you know, if you've got 10 guild forces in a territory, you don't necessarily have to dial 9 of them because you've got that added bonus from the ECAS forces, and you may have Duke Vidal as well, adding 6 and not having to worry about face dancers or traders. So, yeah, there you have it. So let me know in the comments, what do you think of the Stockpile Alliance? Have you seen it in action? Have you had to face it? Were you playing it before? Any of those interesting stories there. I think it's a very strong alliance, one of the stronger power alliances in there. So it's nice to finally give them their due in this video. That's it for this one, everyone. Thanks for watching, and we will see you again soon.